Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Fred KOWAL. I am president of United University Professions, and I want to thank all of you for joining us here to show our continued support for the UUP New York Heals campaign. And it is so vitally important as we look to the next budget that the governor will be proposing very soon, that this be the year where we turn the tide away from now well over a decade of austerity funding for SUNY, where more and more of the burden has fallen on students as opposed to the public and the state, which has the resources to support a truly public university. Students will continue to seek out their futures. We owe it to them. We owe it to them to make that future rich in opportunity and success. A commitment from New York State to appropriately fund public higher education is the linchpin in our efforts to provide every SUNY student with the world-class education that they deserve at an affordable and accessible level of tuition. As a public university system, SUNY's only funding streams are the annual operating aid that we receive and the tuition and fees that are paid. And let us all remember, students certainly know this, that though tuition might have been rising in a gradual pace, and we like to hear about how tuition, relatively speaking, is not that high compared to neighboring states, fees have had no control whatsoever, and those fees have grown to such an extent, and for all intent and purposes are out of control, that for some of our students, education has become too expensive to afford. That must end. As operating aid to SUNY universities has stagnated, despite increasing operational costs and needs, our public colleges, like Buffalo State, and universities have been forced to rely increasingly on you, the students. This is an abandonment of the ideal of a public university. It is furthermore an abandonment of the obligation we who are the leaders of this state owe to our young. As a result, right now students shoulder twice the funding burden for our schools than the state does, an unacceptable gap created by years of disinvestment in our public higher education system by the state of New York. This stagnation in operating aid is contributing to our students' ever-increasing student debt burden, not only making it more difficult for students to attend our schools in the first place, but leaving them with untenably high debt to pay off after leaving our campuses. We take a tremendous amount of pride in the exceptional education our public institutions offer to students here in New York. Yet it is incumbent upon us and our state lawmakers to ensure that education remains available to every young New Yorker who wants to pursue it. UUP members help educate tomorrow's workforce. We conduct groundbreaking research. We provide access to health care in historically underrepresented and underserved communities, all as part of a SUNY system that is the backbone of our state. We cannot afford to continue the pattern of disinvestment and neglect that the Cuomo administration began. As I've been stating for the past several weeks, at every opportunity I can, austerity budget left town as disgraced as Andrew Cuomo. Let's leave it there in the dustbin of history. If we want to maintain our legacy as one of the nation's best public higher education institutions, we must receive full and adequate funding from the state in the 2022 state budget, including, but not solely, a $150 million injection in new operating aid to all campuses. Such funding of SUNY will ensure full and complete opportunity for our students, and by extension will enhance the future for all New Yorkers. We know of the economic impact SUNY has. And a full commitment from New York State will allow our campuses to stop focusing on deciding which critical services or programs should be cut, and how to make ends meet. Instead, they will finally be able to get back to focusing solely on offering every student the opportunities and possibilities that all deserve. Our SUNY schools have made tremendous efforts on really tight shoestring budgets, and they deserve incredible praise for their achievements in the face of these chronic funding shortages. But praise is not enough. To put it simply, it's time to pay up, New York. It's important to remember that a SUNY education creates the world's citizens of tomorrow. We desperately need them to conquer the challenges we face today: racism, the climate crisis, and the pandemic that is ravaging our planet. Without such global citizens, we will not have the communities of wisdom we need to face these challenges with a commitment to the truth, to facts, to shared community, and to justice. Because lest we forget too easily, justice does not burst forth on the field of human endeavor unbidden. It only does so through the unrelenting efforts of young and old, endowed with the means to till the soil, nurse the crop, and harvest the bounty of freedom and equality. Such a harvest, rich it must be, depends on the commitment of all of us to the ideal of public higher education for all, enlightening, accessible, and affordable. So I issue the challenge to all of us here today. Let's make this the year when we turn away once and for all from the mistakes of the recent past. Our students demand it, as does our common future require it. Justice is calling. We dare not ignore the call. The work awaits. Let us begin.
You know, it's no secret, right? We had the special sauce for SUNY. After the war, WW2, we figured out, how do we make a middle class? How do we keep America bound together? And all the great minds in all the 50 states said, higher education is it. We funded a GI Bill. We built these and expanded these wonderful campuses. But somehow in the 80s, this insidiousness of austerity started creeping in. And you know what? We could just trim a little bit of SUNY. We could trim a little bit of SUNY. We could trim a little bit, and then we can enhance tuition. We could increase tuition. You know what? Let's put a few fees on top of that. So the SUNY that I graduated from in 1987 with $750 tuition per semester, we went to Albany and protested. You know what we protested? When they had the timidity to say, we're going to raise it to $775. That was a massive fight. The first governor, Cuomo, pledged, I will have SUNY tuition zeroed out during my tenure by inflation. I'm never going to raise it. But Pataki came in, and austerity came in, and suddenly is this idea that we should treat SUNY like it's some sort of revenue source. But the revenue is going to be picked from the students' pockets. So in many ways, we've lost our way with SUNY, and we stopped funding SUNY. But we know why we need to fund students. This is where the middle class is born. The middle class comes from SUNY. I can speak for myself and probably most of my colleagues who went to SUNY. If the only choice was between SUNY and a private education, we would not have a higher education. So we know the mission. We know that SUNY makes the middle class, but we've also seen in the last few years, what is our population? What is our democracy without an educated population? More and more we're understanding that we can't do it unless our population is educated. You know, the scientists, the professionals, the public policy people who are trying to talk back with facts these days, it's becoming harder and harder. So we know what we have to do. We know why it's good for the economy, for the students, but we also know it's a driver of the upstate economy. You know, Buff State's the only urban college, but an investment in Buff State, well, it's good for everyone in this room. It's also good for Grant Street. It's also good for Elmwood Avenue. It's good for the whole community. And the same runs true for Brockport, Fredonia, Cortland, you name it. It's the same analysis. So by investing in SUNY, we invest in all of us. We invest in the whole state. So I will stand with UUP again this year. I appreciate you putting together a real comprehensive drive, and this has got to be the year that we do it.
As a faculty member myself at the University of Buffalo, as a graduate of 2 SUNY schools, and as the parent of 2 current SUNY students, I appreciate, and so I'm very familiar with those fees, just so you know. I appreciate the importance of adequately funding our state university system. I stand before you here today because of an affordable education at the SUNY schools. And in fact, every one of my colleagues, I've gotten to know them, we all are here because of an affordable education at our state university system. We all come from very working class families. I am the first person in my family to go to college, and I know that's probably true for other colleagues. We need to ensure that SUNY remains affordable for New Yorkers for the next generation of assembly members and senators and leaders. This includes funding to reduce the tap cap, which costs SUNY almost $50 million a year. This means the maintenance of effort, making sure we fund that. This means restoring critical mission funding for SUNY hospitals, which have been there for us throughout this pandemic. We must continue to invest in our SUNY system. Without additional operating aid, our campuses are going to have to cut programs and student services. And as has been said, increase costs on students who really cannot afford it. It makes sense to invest. We're investing in our students, investing in the next generation of young people. I want to thank UUP and everyone at SUNY and all of the UUP members for the hard work that you do to help ensure that this university remains a world-class system. I'm proud to stand with you, and you have a champion in me.
But you know, we struggle to make ends meet. And you know, being from a working class, middle class background, I remember going to bed at night in high school, and my mom would clip out, you know, articles from the Buffalo News, and it would say, you know, you need to make, you know, you have to have a college degree, or you have to have a trade to be able to make this much money. And I remember going to bed and just finding these articles, because it was just embedded in us that if you're going to make it, if you're going to go ahead and do better than your parents did, you need that education. You know, so thankfully for the SUNY system, and I'm a proud graduate of SUNY Fredonia. I actually took some classes at SUNY Cortland abroad. I had a great experience there teaching in England before I got, in between my semesters of my master's, and then of course finished my master's here. And a lot of the professors are still my friends to this day and my mentors. And that experience helped me launch my career not only in education but in politics. So I stand before you as an alumni, technically of 2 SUNY schools, but really 3. And SUNY delivered on a promise to me. My 2 brothers, my brother attended University of Buffalo, my other brother SUNY ECC, my dad University of Buffalo. We won't talk about my sister. But she was really smart. No, I'm just kidding. She was able, we were all able to get my dad got able to get a degree later in life because of the affordability, because of the location, because of the resources that were available through SUNY. And, you know, so that's a little bit of my backstory, right? But what are we really here for? And we're really here to make sure that this transformative college education that is SUNY is accessible to anyone who wants to get it. That's the important part. The working class, the poor, the middle class need affordable education. You know, I watched as I graduated in 2000 from Fredonia, and then 2004, I'm going to date myself here, from SUNY Buff State, tuition increased 329%. 329%. That is not even close to inflation, the comparative model. And why? Because the state and the federal government, through austerity, started to peel back on its support for public education. Something that helped us win the Cold War, in my mind, as we decided to change the hearts and minds of people, to upgrade our education, our science community, and those innovations that came with it. So today I want to lend my wholehearted support to the SUNY system. It gave me everything. It gave me friendship. It gave me for life. It gave me an education. It gave me a world to look at and explore that I didn't have in Tonawanda, as a kid who was, working 2 jobs as a paper route in Burger King and trying to get by. That was a different world, and my kids are better off for it. But when it comes to this idea of government mandated things that we have to do without increasing the costs, those expenses end up in really the bank accounts of the kids who go to this school and their families. So we can't allow the costs of increase to SUNY education to outpace the financial means of these students and their families. This campus, like Buffalo State, and every SUNY campus represents potential. And I am a proud graduate of the SUNY system, and I urge New York State to protect and promote the educational dreams of all of those who hope to one day do the same as I or beyond.
3 things are coming to mind when I stand here. Number one, as many of my colleagues, I was also the first one in my family to get a 4-year degree. And I remember crossing the stage over at Rockwell Hall, and I truly thought about what we often will think is sort of a cliche American dream, and that's about how our families come here from far away to pursue something greater. And I couldn't help but think about my grandfather who relocated to Buffalo without knowing a word of English and probably with not much money in his pocket. Certainly not for the weather or the food or anything else. He came here a total stranger and did so because he knew that his children that he hadn't even had yet would have a better life. Fast forward, his son becomes majority leader of the city council after going to ECC, another SUNY school. And I'm honored and humbled to pursue the path that I've pursued in the state assembly. So it's an amazing feeling in knowing that without an education, none of it would have been possible. So it's great to see it all. The second thought I have is that, when you think about SUNY schools, although we can look at them as amazing educational institutions, I really look at them as anchors in communities as well. And there's no better example than Buffalo State College. I have lived my whole life pretty much in the 14213, in and around Grant Street, went to junior high at Campus West when it was here. Still, work here on Grant Street, worked on Grant Street for many years before that, lived in and around this neighborhood, and without this institution here, the stability of this neighborhood wouldn't be where it is. And I'm sure it's like that in other parts of the state as well. And then the last thing I think about is, the real reason that I wanted to pursue this office specifically, because I saw the amazing work that my predecessor did, Sean Ryan. Now I have to say something nice after making fun of how old he is. But also because as long as I can remember, the New York State Assembly has been an advocate for public education at every level. And I'm a believer that if it's not for that advocacy, if it's not for that coalition building that comes with it, then we wouldn't have the strides that we've had, and we wouldn't be able to fight back the things we've needed to fight back. So it's an honor to see this in all these different angles and all these directions. And I know, along with my colleagues, we are going to tirelessly pursue as much as we can, as frequently as we can, as hard as we can for all of SUNY.
And as a very proud first-generation student, I'm very privileged to say that I went to a SUNY school as well as Buffalo State, where I consider home. And thank you. And I'm very proud to serve as the president of the United Students Government here at Buffalo State College, where I represent many students who come from a similar background as well, both from Salone, from Buffalo, from Cheektowaga, and New York City as well, and from all across the world. SUNY has funded most of my personal education, but I know that I'm lucky. I'm the exception to that rule. There are many of my constituents who suffer from the tens of thousands of dollars of debt that they'll have. And once they go to graduate school, that number will only go up. And it doesn't, take a mathematician to understand the financial burden that student loans have and how that impacts their entire life. But what New York State and previous administrations seem to not understand is the greater impact that has on New York State and the world as a whole. When that student lives with that financial burden, their credit score is lowered, they never gain a sense of financial independence, of financial stability in their life. They cannot invest in themselves, they cannot invest in their own communities. Thus, those communities are impacted. And thus, the quality of life for the entire state of New York goes down. Well, it's very clear that, as previous legislators have mentioned, a high school degree and a GED are no longer the ticket to the middle class lifestyle. That is an old mindset from the 70s and 80s that doesn't take into account many of the factors that we have today. A bachelor's degree is that ticket, and we have to make that investment into SUNY and get them fully funded, and I would like to thank UUP for all the work that they've done on that issue. Achieving an education at a SUNY school is world class. It gives you an experience unlike any other. When I graduated high school, I was accepted to several colleges across the country, but I picked Buffalo State for a reason. It was affordable, it was close to home, and I wanted to stay here in my community. I'm very proud of that fact, and I'm proud to serve the student body, but I'm sad to see that SUNY in recent years has been cut, and it's facing so many financial challenges, and in my position as student government president, I've learned that Buffalo State is facing many financial challenges, many issues with student retention, with our own operating deficits, and the financial challenges that come with that. And that future is uncertain, but Governor Hochul has two great opportunities now, starting today. Conducting a national search for a new chancellor who will care about students, following the standard operating procedure of looking for a national search for a chancellor, as well as fully funding SUNY with the 2022 New York State budget, which will address these issues that we've been dealing with for years that have finally been compounded by this pandemic that has totally accelerated so many issues here at Buffalo State, so many other SUNY schools, and SUNY as a system. We can no longer just look at this as an issue that we'll address eventually or that we'll manage in a couple of years. This has to be addressed now. SUNY has to be funded. Unlike many states in the union, we have a very great opportunity with SUNY. It is a tremendous platform. These colleges are so connected, and so many students from New York State and from across the world come to SUNY looking to change their lives. It is an investment that will change their lives forever, their communities forever, and their families forever. So many families put their trust into SUNY by sending their children here. But we cannot abandon SUNY. We cannot look at SUNY as just some political clique or where we'll put in these corporate figures or these political figures and, the students are just the consumers. No, we need to invest in the students. The students need to be the center of our attention, to become the future assemblymen and state senators and legislators of tomorrow, to become the future corporate leaders of tomorrow. SUNY is very important. It is home for many of us and for myself. And I would like to call for the governor to fully fund SUNY. And to work with UUP to achieve a budget, and to work with UUP and others to achieve a budget that reflects what SUNY can become tomorrow, not what SUNY was in the 80s and the 90s and the thousands in the Cuomo administration, what SUNY can become tomorrow, expanding SUNY, growing SUNY, and finally giving it the funding that it deserves.
I am a proud UUP member, over 30 years here at Buffalo State College. This is a great place. It's incredible. And but I do want to mention right off, we don't only want to restore, we want to expand funding for SUNY. Expand. And I'm going to tell you all the reasons why it has to be expanded. Restore is great. Expand is better. And by the way, I do want to mention economic development needs to be on the circle. That would be good in the future. Okay. And why do I say that? I live and breathe economic development. I am the advisor to Buffalo State's provost on economic development, help the college in all areas of economic development, and I direct what I think of as the best small business development center in the state of New York, right here at Buffalo State College. Okay, and further, my center is located in the School of the Professions, and the School of the Professions, it's a terrific synergy between our students, our professors, and economic development. Why? Within SOP, we produce students who are, I call them, they're ready to go. They're rocking. The minute they graduate, they're going to be there. That includes computer science, and dear Dr. Ramona Santa Maria's here. It includes our fashion technology. They're well trained to go into the industry, business, speech technology, fashion, also has about 6 other centers. I mean, it is incredible. They get their degree, they are in demand. want to mention, no one has missed in the media this. There's not enough people to fill jobs. Aren't you hearing that every day, morning, noon, and night, right? And aren't we hearing a second thing? Besides that is the surge in retirements. Baby boomers, they're saying the hell with it after the pandemic, right? They're dropping, boom, 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 okay? So filling those jobs are gonna be a challenge, but how are we going to fill them? We're going to fill them with SUNY graduates, people getting a SUNY education. It is so important. And in my work with entrepreneurs, they were saying, we got to have people to hire. I said, they got to hire our people. You have to hire SUNY grads, and then sometimes there's just not enough. Not just restore, we need to expand. At the center, which I direct, the SBDC, we work with over 1,000 entrepreneurs per year. So lots of entrepreneurial activity. They're growing, they're a backbone of the economy. You know that, but they need to hire people. Further, we want our SUNY grads to consider opening and operating a business. To do that here at Buffalo State, we do operate a student incubator. Yay, terrific. And please note, people think, oh, business majors. No, we have students from all majors engaged in entrepreneurship. Very recently, in the New York State Business Plan competition, very, very competitive. You're up against Cornell, Fordham, all the NYU, Buff State, SUNY grad won in Albany, a criminal justice major. We were so excited about it, starting his own business, and he won in that competition in Albany. Incredible. Just, oh, so exciting. Yay again, SUNY against all these, privates. My God, our kids are better. So then next, we have creativity. We have an advisory council. We just met this morning in this. I'm mentioning this for a reason. We met this morning with a group of, we have about 30 people on a board called ICE, Innovation, Creativity, and Entrepreneurship. We connect with the community. Buff State sponsors that. We connect all these professionals together to make it happen for Western New York. And also, it's a door to the community for people leading various organizations, very important people. I do want to mention that our current governor, Kathy Hochul, was a member of the SUNY Buffalo State ICE Board, Innovation, Creativity, and Entrepreneurship. It was between jobs, okay? She had just, unfortunately, left Congress, and we were able to persuade her to be part of our team. Very exciting. Please remind her of that when we talk about funding, okay? She was part of our team. Last few points. Workforce development, again, I gotta stress that. And this might not seem as exciting to people, but it's a big deal in Western New York. The industry that was hardest hit during the pandemic, hospitality and tourism. Okay, man, they're just very damaged, okay? But at the same time, in the wake of the pandemic, they're going to be rocking and rolling. We're working with them now. There have been various support systems, but they also can't find anybody to hire. Enter again, SUNY Buffalo State. We have the best hospitality and tourism program in at least the region, if not the state, and we're going to need funding to support that, support the professors, again, expand, all right? So in terms of workforce development, economic development, entrepreneurship, SUNY is the place where it's happening. This is the centerpiece for New York State's economy. We need its support. Don't contract, don't just restore, but expand funding for the State University of New York.
Hi, everyone. So yes, my name is Nicole Masaki. I'm the project coordinator for the New York Public Interest Research Group, or NYPIRG, here at Buffalo State. NYPIRG is the state's largest nonpartisan student-directed advocacy organization. We have chapters on 17 campuses all across the state, and we get to engage students on issues that matter, like higher education. Thank you all so much for coming today, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. So during the past decade, New York State has passed budget after budget that provides stagnant funding for higher education, while raising tuition costs and leaving so many students ineligible for financial aid programs. Even though during that same time period, the state's all-funds budget increased by over 26%. While there were some bright spots in New York's higher education budget over the years, the fact remains that the state budget realities over the past decade should not have allowed for increased state support for public colleges and universities, but halted growing tuition burdens placed on public college students and their families. When factoring inflation, the automatic tuition hikes at both SUNY and CUNY have far exceeded the growth of the economy. The erosion of state support is translating into an erosion of student services and quality of education. Students right here at Buffalo State and across the SUNY system have experienced firsthand the difficulty in getting into classes they need to graduate, limited services such as library hours, advisement gaps. That's why over 6,000 students work with NYPIRG at Buffalo State and at schools across New York to sign a petition to Governor Hochul calling on her to usher in a new era for SUNY. By fully funding, thank you. By fully funding SUNY, New York State can invest in more advisors, more student services, and more class offerings so that students can complete their degrees in a timely manner. Cool. Thank you. Increased state funding will alleviate future pressure for a tuition hike, provide critical resources to protect the quality of SUNY education, and provide higher education accessibility for all students. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Nicole. I always love to hear from the students. It takes me back to when I was in a classroom, and I miss that so much. It's so exciting, and it gives me hope in the darkest of days. And, you know, we all know that given what's been happening in the world around us, it is difficult sometimes to find hope. But seeing the work that students do and the enthusiasm that students have about building a better future, as I said earlier, we owe it to them, to this year, and it is this year. Turn the tide, make SUNY right, expand it, make it the institution it, not exactly as it was said earlier, not the way it was, but the way it must be. The world is demanding it. We have challenges that must be faced and overcome, and the way we're going to do it is by generating generation after generation of hopeful, energetic, wise, bright individuals who can do it. And so with that, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. Our work literally begins right now, and we are going to continue with the work and as long as is necessary until we get the budget we must have. I want to thank all of you. I want to thank the media who has been here. We are available for the media afterwards, and for anybody else who has any questions or just wants to talk. Again, thanks very much. Stay safe, stay well. And we'll be back in Buffalo. It's the first time I've been in Buffalo in 2 years. I've missed it so much. It's great to see you all. Thanks very much.